So ever since Christopher Nolan's Batman franchise ended, one of the names that keeps coming up for the role of the Dark Knight is Armie Hammer. Now, Hammer recently appeared on the big screen as the Lone Ranger and was originally cast to play Batman in the canceled George Miller Justice League just a few years ago. Now, however, Hammer is now claiming he has no interest in playing Batman, saying the following: "I'm not actually a big fan of superhero films. If you have a guy who's supposed to be invulnerable, then what's the point?" So, John, buy or sell Hammer's lack of interest in playing Batman?
Okay, I said this type of thing before, I'll say it again. When an actor says, especially when it comes to a franchise like Batman, "I'm not really interested in playing Batman," what the real literal translation is, they're not asking me to play Batman. That's what that means. Because of course he'd want to play Batman. Of course he would want to take on one of the biggest roles, most coveted roles in Hollywood. Of course. And don't give me this line, Armie. Look, I've talked on this show quite a bit that I am an Armie Hammer fan. He has not been in a great movie yet, but I see his, well, I mean, Social Network, obviously, but I've seen his acting and think, you know what? The problem with all the movies that he's in has nothing to do with him. A lot of like Ryan Reynolds quite often. Like Ryan Reynolds has been a bunch of stinkers, but really when you sit down and watch his performance, he's never the problem. The problem with all of Armie Hammer's films, like The Lone Ranger, isn't Armie Hammer. He's actually a pretty good actor. I'm a fan of Armie Hammer. But I'm sorry, dude. You don't get to come out here and say, "Nah, I don't want to play a superhero. What's the point in having a character who's like superpower? That's not interesting." Dude, you already accepted playing the role of Batman a number of years ago, lest you forget, and lest you hope that we forget. Also, don't make really stupid comments like that when you're talking about one of the most popular film genres going around today. There's a reason these movies make billions and billions and billions of dollars. So you don't want to come out there and start making comments like that that's going to tick a lot of this fan base off. I'm going to include myself in that. And also, please don't pretend that, "Oh yeah, no, I'm just not interested," because we all know all that really means is that you weren't offered the job. That's what it means, and now you're passing it off. So, dude, just stay quiet. I'm a fan of yours. Don't make stupid PR mistakes like this, because this was a very, very idiotic thing to say. Dennis, how do you see it?
Yeah, I have to sell this as well. I mean, it's one of those situations, kind of like the Johnny Depp retiring thing, where it's a bruised ego. You know, he just was in Lone Ranger, it bombed, and now he's like, if you watch Lone Ranger, which I did, like Lone Ranger character, while not a superhero, it has elements of that. You know, where he's kind of doing some fantastical things, and it's kind of like, I mean, Batman doesn't actually have any powers. You know, so it's not that far off, and I think it's one of those situations where, yeah, he's like more upset over his last movie than he is about like actually thinking that the superhero genre sucks. Yeah, I think it's a bad move on his part, and yeah, I have to sell it.
Agreed.
You guys, I thought this was so stupid. I was just laughing when I was reading that quote. I could barely get through it. I can't believe that he said that. I personally am not a big fan of Armie Hammer. I think he's talented and I think he'll grow into his talent, but to me he's kind of green and he's not a leading man yet. So I never really wanted to see him as a Batman personally. But saying something like this I think is really dumb, and he's shooting himself in the foot. And who doesn't want to be a part of these huge franchises that are making money, that are building fan bases? There are people coming out. You're coming to see them in theaters. People didn't come to see The Lone Ranger. Sorry, Armie. I really think that this is just such a bad thing for him to say and a really bad PR move.
Yep, really stupid.